My wife is fond of flying flags. That is what Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito said when he blamed his wife for flying two different flags at their homes that are associated with the Stop the Steal movement and carried by rioters at the January 6th insurrection. New secret recordings of his wife, Martha Ann Alito, are revealing more about what motivates her to fly flags.
You know what I want? I want a Sacred Heart of Jesus flag because I have to look across the lagoon at the Pride flag for the next month.
Exactly.
And he's like, oh, please don't put up a flag. I said, I won't do it because I'm deferring to you. But when you are free of this nonsense, I'm putting it up and I'm going to send them a message every day. Maybe every week I'll be changing the flags. There'll be all kinds. I made a flag in my head. This is how I satisfy myself. I made a flag. It's white and it's yellow and orange flames around it. And in the middle is the word vergogna. Vergogna in Italian means shame.
That is the wife of a Supreme Court justice being openly hostile to a complete stranger about the Pride flag, a symbol of freedom and equality for the LGBTQ plus community during Pride Month. People like me being proud of who they are makes her mad. It makes her want to send them a message. It makes her want to fly a flag that says shame. This is not a woman who is unclear about the message of the flags that she's flying. And for what it's worth, I don't think anyone would care if they looked across the Potomac and saw a Jesus flag flying. There are lots of Martha Anns in America who also harbored this kind of grievance. But this is Martha Ann Alito. And she's not just any random person. She's married to a Supreme Court justice for life, one of the most powerful people in the country who's actively rolling back Americans' constitutional rights. Justice Alito authored the majority opinion revoking nearly 50 years of rights for women when the court overturned Roe versus Wade. And that laid the foundation for another right-wing justice with a right-wing wife, Clarence Thomas, to target the LGBTQ plus community by saying the Supreme Court should reconsider two cases that affirm the rights of same-sex couples, including same-sex marriage. Martha Ann Alito longs for the day when 74-year-old Justice Alito is, quote, free of all this nonsense. She's thinking about who will replace him on the court. Are you? Joining me now, Kelly Robinson, president of the Human Rights Campaign. Kelly, thank you for coming back to The Last Word. Your reaction to what we heard from Mrs. Alito?
Shocking. And also not shocking in the same sense. I mean, what she's saying about flags, it's not about flags. It's a dog whistle to MAGA bullies across the board. What she wants to do is use the flag as a symbol to talk about how they want to erase us from public life, to push us back into the closet. And when I think about what today represents, not only is it Pride Month, but tomorrow represents 8 years since a Pulse mass shooting where 49 members of our community, their lives were stolen forever. This kind of violent action and political rhetoric, it leads to real world outcomes. So anyone that's listening to her, anyone that's watching what she says should be very, very concerned, not only about her words, but what it means in terms of the actions of people that are listening to her.
Mm-hmm. There's audio, new audio from Justice Alito tonight. Listen.
I just wanted to ask you, why do you think what is so attacked and being so marketed by the media?
Well, I think it's a simple reason they don't like our decisions and they don't like how they anticipate we may decide some cases that are coming up. That's the beginning and the end of it.
Kelly, does this sound ominous given the two abortion cases and two January 6th cases yet to be decided this term?
To me, it sounds hypocritical. I mean, I remember when Barack Obama wore a tan suit and people acted like it was the end of democracy.
Lost their minds.
We're talking about right. And now we're talking about a whole Supreme Court justice whose wife is saying things like this, who's espousing these beliefs that are concerning for someone that's on the highest court of the land. So I do think that anyone that is listening to the words that are coming out of Justice Alito's mouth, you should be concerned. But I also know that if you're a person of color, if you're an LGBTQ plus person, if you're a woman or someone who's non-binary, we don't have the luxury of letting our concern and fear put us into a state of paralysis. We have to understand that this is why it is more critical than ever that we get out and we vote this November. Our lives are quite literally at stake.
You know, Trump is out there giving comfort to anti-abortion groups, promising to, quote, defend life, while Republicans are not voting to protect conception. Today, a federal judge struck down a Florida ban on transgender care for minors. These all sound like rights this ideological Supreme Court has no interest in protecting.
They don't. They've said the quiet part out loud already. I mean, we have to remember that when Roe v. Wade was overturned and Clarence Thomas's concurrence, he said out loud, the next the court should revisit Obergefell. They should revisit Lawrence. They should revisit Griswold. These are cases that fundamentally asserted our basic rights as LGBTQ plus people in this country and our right to contraception. So anytime they say that these things aren't on the table, that these rights are not at risk, look at what they are doing. We should all, again, be very concerned about what we're seeing, but also take it as a call to action. Because at the end of the day, we still live in a democracy. Our votes still count. And there's something that we can do right now about how this court has gotten so far disconnected from its actual mission in our democracy.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I was at the Juneteenth event where I met your beautiful wife last night, but that's not the point why I'm bringing that up. I want to play something that Vice President Harris said last night. Watch.
Across our nation, we witness a full-on attack on hard-fought, hard-won freedoms and rights, including the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body, the freedom to be who you are and love who you love openly and with pride, the freedom from fear of bigotry and hate, the freedom to learn and acknowledge our nation's true and full history, and the freedom that unlocks all others, the freedom to vote.
How important is it to stress to voters that the Supreme Court is on the ballot in November? What's at stake is more Samuel Alitos or more Ketanji Brown Jacksons?
Exactly. I mean, that's what I saw from Kamala Harris right now. That is leadership. And at the end of the day, when we think about this election that's coming up, it's not just about two candidates. It's actually about two fundamentally different visions for our country, two fundamentally different visions for our futures and for our children. And at the end of the day, when you talk to people, regardless of where they are on the political spectrum, a lot of our fears are the same. Worried that your kids will have a better life than you do today. Concerns about inflation, making sure that schools are good and welcoming and safe. But I want to make sure that whoever we elect, that their solutions are about moving us forward and not pulling us back. And what the Supreme Court has shown that they are willing to do, from the overturn of Roe v. Wade to all that they have said and done in the last year, they are willing to roll back the rights, not only of the last 10 years or last 40 years, but of the last 100. We have got to do something about it for the sake of all of our communities, and especially for the sake of our kids.
Kelly Robinson, president of the Human Rights Campaign, thank you very much for coming to The Last Word.
Thank you.
Coming up, it's election night in Nevada. It's a must-win state for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and a must-win seat for Democrats if they hope to hold on to the Senate. Nevada Senator Jackie Rosen joins us next. It's primary night in Nevada, and on Sunday, Donald Trump issued this warning for voters.
If we win Nevada, we win the whole thing.
Donald Trump is vying for Nevada's 6 electoral votes in a state that has not voted for a Republican for president since George W. Bush won re-election 2 decades ago. In fact, Joe Biden won Nevada by 33,596 votes. And Republicans haven't won a Senate race in Nevada since 2012. But in 2022, Democrat Steve Sisolak became the only incumbent to lose re-election that year. Voters across the state cast their ballots in today's primary election. The polls close at 10 p.m. Eastern, but it is still too early to call the Republican Senate primary. With less than 5 months until Election Day, Donald Trump told his supporters exactly what he thinks of them.
I don't care about you. I just want your vote. I don't care.
Joining us now, Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada. She is a member of the Armed Services Committee and is running for re-election to the U.S. Senate in 2024. Senator Rosen, thank you for being here. Donald Trump called you a, quote, terrible senator at that rally on Sunday because he knows if you win, it will be you and not a Republican voting for federal judges and abortion legislation and a whole host of other issues.
Well, let's be clear. Donald Trump lost Nevada twice, and that's a fact. And he clearly doesn't know about Nevada because if he did, he would know that I have a record, and I have a record of being one of the top 10 most bipartisan senators overall, the top 10 most effective Democratic senators, and the top 2 most independent Democratic senators serving in the Senate. Nevada voters are pragmatic. They want someone who's going to support a women's right for reproductive freedom, to get that reproductive health care. My presumptive opponent, Sam Brown, he wants to take away those rights. He wants to sit in your doctor's office looking over your shoulder. Nevadans want me to continue to protect Social Security and Medicare like we did when we lowered the prices for prescription drugs, giving $35 insulin. Sam Brown and MAG extremists want to take that away. I don't know about Sam Brown, but I took care of my parents and in-laws as they aged. I would never, never want to hurt them, never want them to pay higher prices. I don't know what he's thinking, but I'm going to protect seniors. I always have. And so Donald Trump doesn't know our state. There's a clear choice here. There's a senator who wakes up every day putting Nevadans first, has a bipartisan pragmatic record to deliver on, or someone who only puts Donald Trump first. That would be Sam Brown.
Mm-hmm. Senator, Voter Latino recently conducted a poll of 2,000 Latino voters in 5 swing states, including Nevada, and found that 18%, or about 1/5 of likely Latino voters, are considering voting for a candidate other than President Biden or Donald Trump. Senator Rosen, how are Democrats reaching out to and mobilizing Latino voters?
Well, I can tell you Latino voters in Nevada, they are the decisive vote. And I can also tell you that my team in Nevada, so many of them born and raised in Nevada, I myself lived there for the last 50 years, just about. And so we're in the community all the time. We are listening and we are responding. I can tell you, I sit on the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee, and when I talk to our Latin Chamber of Commerce, we talk about all the Latino small businesses, so many entrepreneurs. We want to be sure that they have all the tools that they need to keep and start their small business and thrive. And we talk about affordable health care. It's really, really important. And we talk about education, our environment, and we're connecting with our Latino voters every single day on the issues that matter to them. Kitchen table issues, the same issues that matter to everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Senator Rosen, the late longtime Nevada Senator Harry Reid built a famous statewide Democratic organization in Nevada. Is the Reid machine still in effect in Nevada?
Well, what Senator Reid did was really build what they call a coordinated campaign. So what that means through our Nevada State Democratic Party, all of the candidates, the incumbents and the candidates are running, we work together to be sure that we go knock on doors, we do our field program, we're talking about the issues, we coordinate. That's really was the magic, being sure that we were communicating, working together, bringing people together, because Nevada families really matter, and listening to them and delivering for them really matters. Like delivering for our seniors, I can tell you for our veterans, we passed the PACT Act, up in northern Nevada and Reno. We're going to have the new VA hospital. They're searching for that 50-acre site now. It's going to be a game changer for the veterans in northern Nevada. So whether it's our seniors, our veterans, our students, or our tourism economy, we're listening and we're delivering.
Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada, thank you very much for coming to The Last Word. Today, a jury convicted Hunter Biden, the only surviving son of President Joe Biden, of 3 federal gun felonies. After little less than 3 hours of deliberations, 12 jurors in President Biden's home state of Delaware agreed with prosecutors that Hunter Biden lied on a mandatory gun purchase form by saying he was not illegally using or addicted to drugs at a time when he was. President Joe Biden responded with this statement. As I said last week, I am the president, but I am also a dad. Jill and I love our son, and we are so proud of the man he is today. I will accept the outcome of this case and will continue to respect the judicial process as Hunter considers an appeal. Jill and I will always be there for Hunter and the rest of our family with our love and support. Nothing will ever change that. He didn't attack the verdict. He didn't say it was rigged. He didn't attack the judge, the prosecutors, or the jury. No, all the wild and irresponsible reaction to the Hunter Biden verdict today came from Republicans, some of whom have embraced the conspiracy myth that the Justice Department charged and convicted Hunter Biden of these felonies to misdirect from other crimes, big league crimes, unnamed, unspecified, imagined Biden crimes that are much bigger and badder than all the actual crimes Donald Trump is charged with. Ex-Trump advisor Stephen Miller posted the Hunter Biden verdict was proof that DOJ is Joe's election protection racket. The Trump campaign called the verdict a distraction from the real crimes. One right-wing commentator thinks Hunter Biden was prosecuted as cover for the Trump prosecution?
The system is fair. You go after Donald Trump and you go after Hunter Biden.
Okay. In Republicans' defense, you might go a little crazy, too, if you had to defend backing a known fraudster, sexual abuser, and now 34-time convicted felon for president. In a new op-ed, Attorney General Merrick Garland denounced the Republican attacks on the Justice Department. Quote, they are baseless, personal, and dangerous. Today, the DOJ sent a letter to Jim Jordan to confirm that there were no emails between any Justice Department officials and the office of Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Quote, the department has no control over the district attorney, just as the district attorney has no control over the department. The committee knows this. Despite that, District Attorney Bragg has agreed to testify before the House on July 12th. The day after Donald Trump's sentencing. A spokesperson for the Manhattan DA's office said, quote, it undermines the rule of law to spread dangerous misinformation, baseless claims, and conspiracy theories following the jury's return of a full-count felony conviction in People v. Trump. Nonetheless, we respect our government institutions and plan to appear voluntarily before the subcommittee after sentencing. Joining us now, Neil Katyal, former acting Solicitor General of the United States, who's argued more than 50 cases before the Supreme Court. He's a professor at Georgetown Law, an MSNBC legal analyst, and host of the podcast Courtside with Neil Katyal. Neil, thank you very much, as always, for being here. So now, some Republicans are pushing the Hunter Biden jury verdict as proof of a DOJ conspiracy. This is some Carrie Mathison red yarn all over a corkboard stuff. Did you have that on your bingo card?
It's almost impossible. I mean, Jonathan, the verdict today makes these conservative claims look ridiculous. I mean, for years, these conservatives have been crowing about a politicized Justice Department, Biden politicizing it, and so on. What happened today? The Justice Department convicted the president's own son, his only living son. I mean, imagine what that would take. Like, let's say you were the attorney general and the president gave you that job, Jonathan, one of the most important jobs in the country, in the world, and you had the power, as every attorney general does, as Merrick Garland does, to end the prosecution with the stroke of a pen, and you didn't do it. Garland didn't do it. That's what the rule of law is all about. And similarly, the Constitution gives the president the power to pull the plug on any prosecution. That's part of Article 2. So President Biden could have absolutely ended this prosecution once and for all. He didn't do it. That's the test about someone who has convictions in the system. And when it's over, you didn't hear Joe Biden whining about a Trump judge, even though the judge here is literally a Trump judge appointed by Trump. Rather, you heard the president say he would accept the outcome of the case. I know no other word for that, but presidential.
He even went so far as to say he wouldn't pardon his son. That's how much respect he has for the system. So Neil, we saw this with Judge Merchan, and it seems to be Merrick Garland's way too, trying to lower the temperature in the wake of these over-the-top Trump Republican attacks. Do you think he's responding proportionately to the Trumpian all-out war on our justice system?
I was really glad to see the Attorney General's op-ed today in the Washington Post basically saying, look, what the department does is just apply the rule of law, and we do so fairly and impartially. That's the Justice Department that I saw, Jonathan, when I worked there in 2 different administrations. And it's like why people respect this country so much. I mean, this morning I had the privilege of speaking at a naturalization ceremony for 150 new citizens from 54 countries. And what do they respect about America? They respect exactly a verdict like this, that, you know, even the president's own son could be convicted by the president's Justice Department and the president's prosecution arm, because this president, as almost every president in our history does, respects the Constitution and respects the rule of law, unlike some of these Republicans like Stephen Miller, who spit on this every chance they can.
Mm-hmm. What do you expect to see when Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg testifies before Jim Jordan's subcommittee? Do you think he made the right decision?
I expect to see a big nothing. I expect to see all sorts of innuendo akin to the kind of innuendo we're hearing today about how, you know, Joe Biden helped orchestrate the felony conviction of his own son, even though it was overseen by a Trump-appointed special counsel and adjudicated by a Trump judge. I mean, I'm sure we'll hear, you know, cray-cray like that, but there will be no facts because, as, you know, the Justice Department even said today, literally, there was no communication between the prosecutor, Matthew Coangelo, who is the centerpiece of these crazy conspiracy theories, and the Justice Department. Zero, none. So have the hearing, by all means, of course. That's part of Congress's responsibilities and oversight. But, you know, it'd be nice to have some facts in those hearings.
Yeah, be nice to have some. I'm not expecting any, though. Neil Katyal, thank you very much for coming to The Last Word.
Thank you.
So here's how you know convicted felon Trump knows it could still get much worse for him.
We have a deranged individual named Jack Smith. He's a deranged, dumb guy. He's a dumb son of a...
Convicted felon Trump, indicted by Special Prosecutor Jack Smith on multiple criminal charges for his unsuccessful attempt to overturn the 2020 election, also praised the January 6th rioters who attacked the United States Capitol, calling them warriors.
Those J6 warriors, they were warriors, but they were really more than anything else. They're victims of what happened. All they were doing is protesting a rigged election. That's what they were doing.
While Trump was ranting in Las Vegas Sunday, President Biden was returning from France after commemorating the 80th anniversary of D-Day. The Biden campaign has released this ad featuring 3 American veterans slamming former President Trump for being a draft dodger.
A good commander-in-chief is somebody who gives a shit. My name is Curtis Register. I served in the United States Marine Corps.
My name is Ed McCabe. I served from the 1990s into 2014.
Hey, my name is Matthew McLaughlin. I was a Navy pilot for 8 years.
It is the first time I'm shaking the hands of a president of the United States. It was pretty impactful to me to see an individual that supports troops not just on the battlefield, but when we return home.
I see a man in Joe Biden who accepts accountability and responsibility. And when I see his predecessor, Donald Trump, I see a man who is only in this for himself.
Who criticizes veterans, who doesn't see it important for him to go to the funerals.
Donald Trump has zero accountability in his life.
He's a draft dodger, simple as that.
Yesterday, draft dodger Donald Trump sat for his first probation hearing as a convicted felon, a mandatory requirement before his sentencing on July 11th. Meanwhile, President Biden held a White House event commemorating Juneteenth, a federal holiday he established in 2021 to recognize the emancipation of enslaved African Americans after the Civil War. In his remarks, President Biden reminded the audience why Black history is still so important.
Well, let's be clear. They're all ghosts in new garments trying to take us back. Well, there are taking away your freedoms, making it harder for black people to vote or have your vote counted, closing doors of opportunity, attacking the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you can believe it, banning books about black experiences, trying to erase and rewrite history. Our history is not just about the past, it's about our present and our future. It's whether that future is a future for all of us, not just for some of us. Folks, black history is American history.
Black history is American history. Joining us now, former Assistant Democratic Leader in the House of Representatives, Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina. He is a national co-chair of the Biden-Harris 2024 campaign. Congressman Clyburn, always great to see you. Welcome back to the show. I was at the Juneteenth event last night, and President Biden has touted the Inflation Reduction Act and lowering drug prices. But listen to how the event's host, comedian Roy Wood Jr., talked about that achievement.
We have legislation now for cheaper prescription drugs because of this administration. Insulin is down to $35 if you're a senior. And I don't know if anybody here has paid for insulin before, but that is like the bottle service of prescription drugs. So we appreciate that $35 right there.
Congressman Clyburn, I love the relatability Roy Wood Jr. used to break it down. It's funny, but it's telling a policy success story. Does the campaign need to do more of that?
Well, thank you very much for having me, John. Absolutely. We've got to get this out there. This administration has a record that is unequaled, cannot even be imagined by a lot of people who thought about these kinds of things as we went into the last election. This administration, with its rescue plan, has brought young children out of poverty. With its infrastructure bill, is put in $65 billion for internet when we had no money for infrastructure in the previous administration. It's Chip and Science Act, it's PAC Act, it is Inflation Reduction Act. All of these things people said could not be done. Joe Biden did them. And I get a little irritated when I hear people telling me, well, he isn't talking loud enough. He isn't showing the kind of energy we want. We are about substance, not style. That is what will move this country forward. That is what will leave for our children and grandchildren a country to be proud of. Real substance. You can talk loud, you can misrepresent, you can prance around, but the question is, what are you doing? You know, I grew up in a parsonage, and I used to listen to my dad's sermons. And one of the things I learned early, it is their deeds that make them, not their words. And if you get caught up on the words and don't pay any attention to the deeds, you might believe in Donald Trump. But if you're all about deeds, you will be supporting this president, this administration, Biden and Harris.
Well, let's talk about some more deeds, Congressman Clyburn, because today the Biden administration announced that medical debt can no longer be considered in credit scores. And President Biden has made debt elimination one of his main pitches on the campaign, but new polling shows Americans are split on student loan forgiveness. 3 in 10 adults approve, while 4 in 10 disapprove. How concerned are you about those polling numbers we see on the screen right there?
I think it is because people have misrepresented this whole thing about student loan debt elimination. Joe Biden, if you look at the program, he made it very clear. We are talking about eliminating this compounded interest and all these things that have accumulated beyond what the original debt was. I've got a constituent, not a black constituent, a constituent in North Charleston who wrote a letter to the president with a copy to me. His original loan was $60,000. Over the years, he has paid back nearly $200,000 because of compounded interest, and paying for it for more than 20 years, and still owed money. So when he eliminated that debt, it was on the compounded interest, not the original loan. And people need to look at that. When I hear Romney, Senator Romney, saying that this is a bad deal, how can it be a bad deal? The principal was paid back a long, long, long time ago. These people are paying compounded interest that has been put out there by people who are making money when the original principal was paid back a long time ago. So that's what's going on here. So nobody is paying anybody's debt. They paid off the debt. It's the compounded interest that people are collecting, and that's putting people in the poorhouse, as we say down south.
Congressman, let me get you on one more thing before we have to go in a couple minutes. Let's talk about comments that Entertainment 50 Cent made while on Capitol Hill last week. Listen to this.
What do you see as the significance of African-American men in this election for both of you?
I see them identifying with Trump.
Why do you say that?
Because they got RICO charges.
Congressman Clyburn, your reaction, black men are moving to Trump because they've got RICO charges?
Look, he should have been with me last Saturday night at the South Carolina NAACP Freedom Fund dinner. 100% support for Joe Biden. Not one single person in there, male or female, for Donald Trump. You should have been with me at Greater Target Memorial AME Church on Sunday morning. 100% for Joe Biden. Not a single person there for Donald Trump. I don't know where 50 Cent is hanging out, but I hang out with the NAACP. I hang out with the black community, black faith community, and I don't see any support for Donald Trump. These people aren't worried about RICO statutes. They're worried about their children's student loan debt. They're worried about the cost of insulin when it comes to their health care. They're worried about affordable housing. They're worried about broadband deployment. That's what they're getting from this president, and they aren't thinking about whatever it is that 50 Cent is talking about in RICO statutes. The RICO statutes down in Georgia, that is what Donald Trump violated. And so we are upset because he is being called to account for violating the RICO statutes. Come on, 50 cents. That's worth $1 to know better.
Congressman James Clyburn, always great to see you. Thank you for coming to The Last Word.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, 50 cents.